Welcome back to the online sessions on MCC subject. And in the previous class, what we discussed, in the previous class, we discussed about MCC comes under the wireless communications. And we discussed about the differences between the wired communication, wireless communication, and basic cellular structure that we normally going to use to communicate using the mobile setup or using a mobile unit. Now, in the today's session, we discuss about the basic cellular system that we normally going to consider and frequency reuse, and also finally we discuss about the handoff process. Now, every basic cellular system consists of three basic units. What are all they? They are going to be the mobile unit, cell site, and MSC, mobile switching center, or can also be called as a mobile telephone switching office, MTSO. Now, what is a mobile unit? The mobile unit is nothing but a portable device, portable electronic device, normally used to carry with low power handset by the user. Now, use it to have a wireless communication, or used to have a wireless communication between the mobile unit and the cell site. The next one is going to be called as a cell site. What is a cell site? Cell site is nothing but an interface between the mobile user and the MSCs or MTSO. Now, this is normally going to provide an interface between the mobile unit and MSO. So it is normally going to connect to the mobile switching center and try to establish a connection between the MSC and the end user. So basically, what are all the elements that this particular base station are known as cell site? So cell site can also be called as a base station. So what the base station is normally going to contain is normally going to contain the control unit, radio cabinets, its own antennas, power plant units, and data terminals. So this base station units is responsible for establishing a connection between the mobile unit and the MSCs, mobile switching center or mobile telephone switching offices. So the next unit we normally going to have is going to be called as a mobile telephone switching office. Now it is nothing but a central coordinating office or central coordinating element in the architecture for all the cell sites and contains cellular processor and the switch. So it is normally going to control all the call processing and handling the billing activities. So therefore, it is normally going to contain the central processing unit. So normally used for providing central coordination and cellular administration. It also going to switch the one mobile subscriber to the another mobile subscriber by using different switching mechanisms. And now what is the link which is normally going to be there between the mobile unit and the base station? The link is normally going to be the radio link. So where electromagnetic signals are normally going to get transmitted and received by both the mobile station or a cell site and the mobile unit. So what is a mobile unit? Mobile unit is nothing but a mobile phone that the user is normally going to carry. It can be called as a mobile unit in the MCC subject. And one more link we normally going to have is going to be the data link. So two links we're going to have. One is radio link. Radio link is normally going to carry the voice and signaling information between the mobile unit and the base station. Radio link is not, sorry, data link is normally going to carry once again both the data, both voice and data between the cell sites and the MSTUs. So that means here the communication between the base station and the MSC or MSTU is not, it should be compulsorily very fast. That is why we normally going to have a wide kind of communication between the data units and the MSCs. The next come to the shape of the cell, shape of the cell site. So what should be the shape of the cell site? So we're going to have so many shapes that we can normally going to consider, which is normally going to cover the signal in a particular shape. Say we may have a circular shape, we may have a square shape, we may have equilateral triangle shape, and lastly we may have a hexagonal shape. Now every shape other than hexagon has got its own drawbacks of coverage of the signal over the region of coverage. So if you consider the circle, see this here, now we are going to considering a circles. So each cell station or each base station is normally going to cover the signal in a circular fashion. So called as a circular region of communication. If it is going to cover a circular region of communication, if you see in between the circles, there is a lot of area which is left over. Now which is nothing but something like the base station is not covering those regions. So here that means if at all the mobile unit is normally going to get placed in these regions are not normally going to get reached by the base station or a cell site. So therefore this particular shape of circle is not normally preferred as a shape of the area of coverage for the cell site. So next condition, next shape is normally going to be say a rectangular shape. If at all you normally going to think about rectangular shape, so all these rectangles are normally placed apart. When all these rectangles are normally placed apart, if you see the distance between one center of the one cell site with center of the other cell site, say D1 and D2, and D1 and D2 are not normally equal to same. So since D1 and D2 is not normally equal to same, it is also not going to cover the entire region of the space. So therefore hexagon is normally going to be the obvious choice, which is normally going to cover the highest area, other than all other shapes. So the geometrical hexagonal shape can be normally taken to avoid the gaps. Now if you simply construct a architecture of the 2G technology or a GSM. Now, if you see this, all these hexagons are connected like this. When all these hexagons are connected like this, between one cell site and another cell site, if you see this, there is no space or a region left over where there won't be any communication. So therefore, obviously, since we can say that since there are no gaps between any two subsequent hexagon cell sites, we can have a maximum coverage of the data or a voice. So therefore, the hexagonal shape is normally preferred in order to cover maximum amount of distances. Okay, so there that is what why we normally going to consider the hexagonal shape. Okay, now we already know what is hexagon. So hexagon is normally going to have a how many sides hexagon is going to have? 6 sides hexagon is normally going to have. Okay, so that is what called basically hexagon. Now distance between centers of two nearly hexagons is normally going to be same. Now if you take two cells, say this cell and this cell, three cells if you take, the distance between the centers of two subsequent cells are normally going to be same. Therefore the coverage of the voice or data is normally going to be preferably very good in the case of the hexagonal shape of the cell sites. The next most important concept we normally discuss here is frequency reuse. Now, frequency reuse is a very important concept for the cellular mobile communications. Why the frequency reuse is going to be very important concept? The reason being is, what is one of the major drawback of the wireless communications? The major drawback of wireless communication is the availability of the bandwidth. All the wireless communications are normally going to have scarce resources in terms of bandwidth, in terms of memory, in terms of speed. All these are the various performance bottlenecks for a wireless communication systems. So as MCC comes under wireless communication systems, MCC is also normally going to have the same drawbacks of the wireless communications. Now let us, since we cannot really get infinite number of bandwidths to transmit our signals, we normally going to use the frequency reusable concept. Now imagine, let us say, imagine that we'll take some cell sites. Say cell sites are going to be, we start from A, we go up to F, A, B, C, D, E, F, E, F, G. So all these are the various cells we normally going to consider in our communications. Now, every cell, say A is one cell, B is another cell, C is another cell, like the D, E, F, are they going to be the various cells used in the GSM technology or 2G technology. Okay, now all these cells are normally going to use different frequency bands or different channels to transmit the voice and data signals. So now here what happens is the same, all this group A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all this is known as a cluster of the cells. So our group of the cell sites, group of cell sites can be called as cluster of cells. So we normally going to have certain cluster of cells here. Now such a cluster of cells, each cell are normally going to use a different frequency bands. Now these same frequency bands can be reused. See here A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Here also A B C D E F G. So three clusters have been used here. All these three clusters are normally going to use the same band of frequencies. Now that means the same band of the same channels have been reused here in order to provide the communication. So with the assumption, with the concept that the signals coming out of cell A is not going to get interfere with the signals at cell A of this particular site. See this cell, this site A or a base station A in this cluster 1 is not going to interfere with the signals of base station A in this cluster 2, because the distance between these two is normally going to be too large. So as the distance increases, the signal strength is going to deteriorate. So because of that concept, by taking that into distance into consideration, we normally going to consider the group of cells in a particular area of coverage for each and every cell. Thereby we can have a flexibility of reusing the same frequency bands for the for the same set of channels, for the same set of sites in a different cluster. So thereby we can simply reuse the same set of frequencies for different cells. So with this, the availability of bandwidth or the availability of bandwidth can be simply reused effectively, right? Because we normally going to have a scared bandwidth resources. What is the meaning of scared bandwidth resources? The mobile phones that we use, the base stations that we use are normally going to process a set of frequency bands. It cannot process infinite number of frequency bands. Since a mobile phone cannot process infinite number of frequencies, why a mobile phone cannot process infinite number of frequencies? Because mobile phone is normally designed with a hardware, and in that hardware we normally going to have a software to process certain frequency bands. So other than those frequency bands, if some other frequency band is normally going to come into the input of that particular cell phone, it simply says that I really don't know or don't aware of this particular band of frequencies. So that means every mobile phone or every electronic gadget is normally going to have a scared bandwidth resources, scared bandwidth availability. Now, because of this problem, what we normally going to do is we introduce a concept called frequency reuse concept, where the where the where the base stations which are there in a cluster are normally going to use different frequency bands. Now, same set of frequency bands can be reused in another cluster, and same set of once again frequency bands can be used in another cluster, with the assumption that the subsequent cells frequency signals are not going to get interfere with each other because of the large distance problems. So every cell tower is normally going to cover approximately around 5 kilometers of the radial distance. So keeping in view, that means the distance between the the cell A in one of the cluster with the cell A in another cluster is normally going to be 5 kilometers apart. If you take cell G, the cell G of this is normally going to be more than 5 kilometers apart with this particular cell G of this cluster. Similarly, cell G of this cluster is going to be separated apart by a 5 kilometers distance of the cell G in this part. Thereby what happens is the signals coming out of this particular cell G of one cluster cannot get interfered with the cell G of another cluster under any circumstances. So by using that particular basic concept of electromagnetic radiations, limitations of electromagnetic radiations, we normally going to introduce this particular concept of the frequency reuse. So what is the basic definition of frequency reuse? Basically, the frequency reuse is known as the design process of selecting and allocating channel groups for all of the cellular base stations. Okay, base station means what? Cell site within a system is called frequency reuse or frequency planning for that particular architecture of the cellular mobile system. So the cells labeled with the same letter use the same group of the channels. Now in the above figure, what we can say now, the cells labeled with the same letter means that they are normally going to use the same set of frequency bands. So like this, repetitively, we can use the same set of frequency bands for n number of clusters in the cellular architecture. Thereby, we can increase the capacity. Now here, using this very concept of frequency reuse, we can increase the capacity of the signal coverage, or the capacity of the cellular system. What is the meaning of capacity? Usage of the mobile units. If you see now carefully, the usage of mobile units are increasing day by day. Many people are buying more than one mobile phones and using those mobile phones continuously. But the frequency channels available, or the bandwidth available, is not changing. It is going to be like that only. So because of that particular problem, what we can normally going to have now, we can have this frequency reuse technique to increase the capacity of the system in terms of providing the connections to n number of mobile units. So this is what basically the concept known as the frequency reuse concept. And another concept which we normally going to have is going to be the handoff strategies. Yeah, another concept is going to be very, very important concept. This is handoff strategies. Now we have just came to know in the previous session, the previous topic, that the cell A and cell B, even though they comes under the same cluster, they are normally going to have a different set of frequency bands. Tower A and tower B, or cell A, cell B, or base station A, base station B, are normally going to radiate and receive the radio signals, okay, with a different set of frequency bands. This is what we discussed, and this has been done due to the concept called frequency reuse. Because we have a frequency reuse concept, we have used a different set of frequency bands for different set of cells used in a cluster. So different set of cells used in a cluster, this is what we have normally used there. Okay, now what is the meaning of handoff now? Handoff means what? See this, there is a simple mobile unit, so called as car, has been represented here. In this car, there is a user of a mobile unit. Now this mobile station is connected to this particular base station. So until this mobile station is in the coverage area of this particular cell A, there is no problem with the connection of the signal with this particular base station. This base station will in turn connect to the MSC. MSC will in turn connect to the PSTN networks. Okay, and that PSTN is once again connected to the MSC of the destination, and destination mobile, and that MSC is connected to the destination of the base station, and that base station is connected to the destination mobile. So thereby the communication is normally going to take place between the two mobiles. That means you are just watching here one more important drawback over here. Even though you are making a call to your adjacent friend who is just sitting beside you, the what is the problem you are encountering here? The call has to go all the way. The call has to go all the way from from your mobile to base station, from base station to MSC, MSC to PSTN, once again PSTN to MSC, once again MSC to the base station to the destination mobile. Now where the destination mobile is, he's just sitting just adjacent to you. But even then, the call should go all the way around. So this is what the drawback. It is going to take a lot of processing is normally involved, even though the destination mobile station or mobile unit is just nearer to you. That is what one of the drawback of this particular type of the architecture, which is known as a 2G architecture. But anyway, it is working fine. So people are using this particular type of architecture since from so long. Right, now coming to the process called handoff. Now what is the handoff process? Now say until and unless the mobile unit, say this car mobile unit is in the region of A, there is no problem with the connectivity. Now once this mobile unit is moving towards the region of B, then what happens? The tower B is normally using the different set of frequency bands or different channels is being used. Now immediately the mobile user, the mobile user frequency channel should get immediately converted, or should get immediately converted to the base station B. Why? Because once this mobile unit crosses the region of say 5 kilometers, now this mobile unit will not receive signals from A. So the mobile unit which is nearer to this mobile unit is going to be station B, or is going to be the mobile station B. So immediately the mobile unit should get connected to B without disturbing his call. So without disturbing his call, another set of frequency bands will be connected, will be allocated to the mobile unit, even though the mobile unit is going traveling from one coverage area to another coverage area without disturbing the call of the mobile unit. So this process of allocating different set of frequency bands to the mobile unit is known as the handoff process. So a very important process in the cellular mobile communications. So how I can define a cellular handoff process now? Handoff refers to the process of transferring an ongoing call or data or a session from one channel connected from one core network to another channel. Handoff, also known as the handover. So this can also be called as a handover. So this should be a continuous service. That means the mobile user should not get a feel that his signal got disconnected and he is normally going to get another connection within a couple of seconds. So the mobile user should be in a feel that the call is continuously connected. Why? Because the cell tower, the base station A, base station B, or base station C, which is adjacent to it, are in the coverage area of a particular zone, say Telangana zone. So until your mobile is in Telangana zone, the billing is going to be same for all the Telangana zone coverage. So therefore, the user should not get a feel that I am crossing from one state to the another state. So that is what simply called as a process called handoff. So handoff should be compulsorily a continuous service or a continuous process. So a continuous service like cellular communication is normally going to get achieved by supporting handoff from one cell to when a mobile unit moves from one cell tower to another cell tower. So an example has been given here for the explanation sake. So consider two adjacent cells A and B, each having its own antennas, its own frequency bands, its own different frequency bands. So consider a user, same scenario has been explained here. Consider a user in cell A which is connected to base station A, which means that the mobile is in cell A, uses the frequency of cell A. When the mobile travels from cell A region to cell B region, then the mobile channel should get switch over from the frequencies of cell A to the frequencies of cell B. So as soon as the mobile enters into the region of cell B, it starts using the frequency band of cell B for the communication. So this process of switching over of frequencies from cell A to cell B is simply called as a handoff process. Now here there is one more performance bottleneck here: a handoff successful, handoff unsuccessful. Now when can the handoff is going to get successful, when can the handoff is normally going to be unsuccessful? It all depends on the handoff threshold signal. So this is the received signal level, and this is going to be the time in the space. Now the mobile unit is simply moving. Say imagine that when the mobile unit is moving from one cell tower to another cell tower, this is the signal level. The signal level is dropping for the cell tower, for the cell A. And now here what happens is until it reaches to the signal zone, very high signal strength of cell tower B, the signal is not connected to cell B. So once the mobile unit reaches to a place where it can reach the good signal strength from cell B, it will be with the cell A only. So once the mobile phone enters, or mobile unit enters into the region of base station B, then immediately the call is normally going to get transferred from cell tower A to cell tower B. So here, if it is at the level of handoff threshold, then immediately the call transfer is normally going to take place from cell tower A to cell tower B. Now this is normally going to happen if the strength of the signal is simply about handoff threshold. So if it falls below this, to a minimum acceptable level, so minimum below the minimum acceptable level, then the call is simply going to get disconnected. So when the mobile unit is moving from cell tower A to cell tower B. So sometimes we normally going to encounter these kind of things when we are moving in a moving vehicle, bus or a car or any other vehicle. Sometimes suddenly what happens, the signal is normally going to get disconnected. Why it is disconnected? It is because of this particular problem. So once the signal strength of the another receiving cell tower is less than the threshold value, then the signal is simply going to get disconnected. So again the user has to make another call to the recipient. Now here this process is shown with the hand of unsuccessful process. See this here, the handoff is unsuccessful. The signal strength is dropping for the mobile unit A the mobile unit with respect to base station A. It is dropping. It has dropped to a level of handoff threshold and it is dropped below than the minimum acceptable level. So now here the cell B coverage area is something like here. So this area it is covering. So therefore, it has not reached to the coverage area of cell B, and since the signal strength has come below, then the minimum acceptable level of the threshold value, then the signal is going to get dropped. And handoff is normally going to get failed, and signal is simply going to get disconnected because of the unsuccessful handoff process. So therefore, there should be a minimum handoff margin. What is the handoff minimum margin? This delta, that means handoff threshold value minus minimum acceptable signal level. This delta is known as the minimum handoff margin value. So you have to compulsorily maintain this minimum handoff value in order to provide a continuous call. So this is nothing but the received power for the handoff minus minimum usable received power for the handoff. If the difference of this is nothing but delta, and the delta is normally maintained in this particular region, then we can normally say that that is going to be the appropriate handoff process. So the handoff process becomes successful only if this delta is not equal to 0. If delta is not is equal to 0 means what? There is a minimum amount of signal for the base station B to receive. So thereby we can say that the handoff process is simply successful. Once the handoff is successful, what happens now? The mobile user is normally going to have a continuous connection of his call with the recipient. So in all this process, if you see, the mobile unit is uninterrupted. The mobile unit is uninterrupted. The mobile unit is getting a feeling that, or a subscriber is getting a feeling that he is having a continuous call. He is having a continuous call. So because of this reason only, you are observing carefully. If you observe carefully in the nearby places of our colonies and all, you see many towers placing which is close, very much close apart. So what is the reason of that very much close apart? So nowadays you are seeing the cell towers are going to be less than 5 kilometers. If you go to BSNL tower, you see very rare. BSNL towers are going to be very rare in comparison with Airtel towers, Vodafone towers, and other commercial business people towers. So why? Because actually, as per the specifications, the region of coverage should be that every tower should get placed at a 5 kilometers radius. But the other vendors like Airtel, Vodafone, and other people, they are not maintaining that. They are just simply keeping all their cell towers which are somewhat less than 5 kilometers distance. So that means they are not strictly following the specifications. So that is the reason why these customers, subscribers of Airtel and other, they are getting a continuous call. They are not getting a bad feeling of using the mobile phone in comparison with the BSNL cell phone users. Okay, so this is what one of the reason of this handoff. So the handoff process in BSNL mobile users are going to be little bit not that good, is not that good in comparison with the other users like Airtel and other people. So this is what the basic concepts, underlying concepts of frequency reuse and the free and handoff process. Okay, now in today's session we'll end up with these two. In next session we normally going to do one problem on the capacity of the capacity of the cell tower. Thank you very much for today's